welcome to the Intuitively Wild podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Levine. Living intuitively wild is about coming back home to ourselves. Here, we talk about how to live connected to ourselves, others, and nature, and make a commitment to radical authenticity, vulnerability, and acceptance. On this podcast, we delve into a wide range of topics that span the human experience. We peel back the layers and talk about the things that are often not talked about. This is a space for us all to walk and wander this path of life together. Let's dig into our roots and go deep. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast and welcome to our monthly ritual of sitting down together to talk about the month that has passed and set our intentions for the month to come. And if you were with us for last month's reflection and intention setting episode, you heard me talk about how I was sharing from a very raw, vulnerable, soft, open place. And it was very early in the morning. I was off the heels of the new moon ceremony and just sharing from that really unfiltered place. And that's where I'm coming from today as well. It is very early in the morning. This is really the first thing I am doing today, which is rare for me. This is my morning ritual for today. And that felt really right. Like I feel really excited and ready to be recording this episode from that space. And I've already done a lot of reflecting and journaling on my reflections and intentions. So I do have my notes here and I will be sharing from that, but I've been thinking a lot about how we edit and present ourselves through content and how more and more the world is asking us to package and perfect and pretty ourselves in order to perform and show ourselves in a certain way. And that way is supposed to be very put together, very streamlined, very efficient, very fast, and how there's no more patience for processing. There's no more patience for in real time thinking and sharing and slow talking, especially in relation to this movement of slow living. And for me, that's such an important part of my life and what I also really equate to intentional living. And just being a real messy human. We don't, podcasts are edited so that you don't hear people's ums or pauses, and everyone wants the Cliff Notes version or quickest way of understanding an article. No one wants to read long form content. And I think that is such a shame. I think that we need more messy imperfections, and we need to hear the pauses, and we need to recognize that the content that we are reading online, the pieces of writing, the podcasts we're listening to, the movies we're watching, they're created by humans, they're art. And especially when it's someone sharing pieces of their heart, like not a certain piece of art that is meant to portray a certain message, but someone sharing themselves, whether that's a podcast about someone just talking about life, or I think we just need more pieces of art in the world. I don't even want to say content, but just like pieces of art in the world that show humans being humans and not trying to really over edit or over filter that in any way. And to recognize how that part of that is the messing up, is the pause, is the is what you're hearing in me now, just like figuring out my words, being in the process in real time and just sharing from that space. And that kind of brings me right into some of my reflections from this past month, because a big part of what I was uncovering this month is how to share while in process. I've always been someone to adhere to this statement, speak from the scar and not from the wound. And that's felt really important to me because I am someone who is very careful not to want to trigger other people, for lack of a better word, and also to be really aware that I move through my own process, and through that my emotions change, my thoughts change. And so I really want to share from the place of where I've landed, the place of grounding, and not share from this in between place when what I say might not feel true once I finished my process. And also, when I'm in process, sometimes things feel very too raw, too vulnerable to share, and I'm still figuring it out for myself. I don't even have the words to articulate what I'm trying to say. But what I've realized this month is that it's not that I necessarily need to speak from the other side of things, and that I have to speak from the scar and not the in between or the figuring it out place. It's that I want to speak from a grounded place. If I am sharing from the wound, or if I am sharing from that in the real time process, it has to be with intention. There has to be a reason why I'm sharing it in that way. There has to be integrity behind that, and it has to still feel grounded. For me, it wouldn't feel good to come on completely overwhelmed, activated, crying, not knowing at all how I'm feeling, because like I said, my emotions can change so much over time. My thoughts can change so much over time. And so I wouldn't want to share something when I'm still very much trying to figure it out, and then a second later be like, I didn't mean anything I just said. Or for it to feel ungrounded, and to share that energy with the world in a way that doesn't feel intentional. I still always want to share grounded within myself, and knowing that the words I'm speaking feel heart-led and truthful to me. So this month I kind of shifted my mindset around it, and wanting to share more in the process, because there's a lot of what I'm going through that I want to share, and I'm still very much in the process. And I want to share it now, and I want to share about that process. And I always just want to make sure I'm sharing from a grounded place, and what I'm sharing is done so with intention. The pieces I'm choosing to share are for a reason and feel helpful and aligned, and still maintaining the privacy and barrier that I need to figure out what I'm moving through in my own way as well. So that's been a big uncovering for me this past month. And part of that is what's happening with the space, getting the space ready. I'm so excited about it. And initially, my goal date was to have an opening event August 23rd. And I was hoping to come on to this month's reflection intention setting episode and really share about all of the details of that. And I can't do that. There's still so much that I don't know. I'm still lacking clarity on so much of the timing and figuring all of it out. Ooh, something in my camera. And I don't know the timing. I've really been holding on to this August 23rd date, and it's been really stressing me out. I've been trying to get all the pieces into place to make it happen. And what I've established is I'm letting go of the timing. I do not know exactly yet when everything's going to be ready and when I'm going to open this space, and that's okay if I have to push it back a week or 2 or 3. I would rather do that and be able to make sure every piece feels intentional and ready and to open from a grounded space, versus rushing and feeling unstable, unsteady, and not ready. The only one putting this timeline on the map anyway is me. Of course, I want to get this space up and running, and I want to start, and I want to make this happen, but I have to trust the timing. That's been, I mean, my biggest lesson this year, but especially with this space in general, is just letting it take the time it needs. And I don't get to decide that. I'm just along for the ride. I'm bringing this space into the world. I'm birthing it. And I don't get to decide its due date. And all I can do is nourish it and show up for it in the best way I can. And trust that it will come to fruition when it does. And it will be the perfect timing. And I have to make my peace with that. July felt a little chaotic. There was a lot of energy happening, a lot of things going on, both personally and professionally, and it could often feel very activating and overwhelming. And that active energy made me keep, that activating energy makes us want to do. And a lot of the times I wasn't able to do. I had to just sit with that activating energy and be patient and trusting. And that was very, very challenging. And I feel like I've made a little bit of a turning point just in these last few days. And again, things are always changing within my internal world. So maybe I will feel differently tomorrow, next week. But I came to this place of acceptance, and I feel like maybe it's the switch into Leo season, and maybe it's just this energy we're entering into August. I really feel this shift in energy of, okay, things are still chaotic. There's still a lot going on, maybe even more so than July, but the energy feels different. I feel like I can move from a place of presence and acceptance versus trying to control and force the doing, force the forward movement. And so even though nothing really has changed, my energy of acceptance feels like it's changed everything. And I've just kind of let my shoulders drop and be like, again, I'm just here to show up and nourish the thing and do the best I can, and it will all fall into place. And that, I mean, this is a huge part of what I was journaling about, is just how life is made up of choices. Every single day we have so many choices, big and small, to make. Even getting out of bed is a choice. Everything's a choice. And while that can feel overwhelming because those choices build up over time to create our life, and for me, sometimes making the bigger choices, it can all feel like so high stakes, and like I have to make the perfect choice and know that it's the right choice. And sometimes I'm lacking the clarity to do so. Like with the space, I'm wanting to announce and decide the opening date, but I'm ready to do that, but I don't have the clarity on what that timing is. And so I can only make the choice that is in front of me with the clarity I have and with the capacity I have. And I can't, first of all, I have to just focus on the choices that are in front of me now. And right now, it's not even the choice of when to open isn't even one I need to deal with. And secondly, I can only make the choices with the clarity that is presented to me right now. And if I was meant to know more or be able to do more right now, I would be. And the clarity and capacity I have in this moment is aligning me with the right timing. And once I know more, I'll make a new choice, but that doesn't make my past choices wrong or like a waste of time, because it was those past choices that led me to more clarity, that led me to the next step to get to where I am now. And so we just really have to, this speaks to presence, like really just allowing ourselves to be where we're at, to be not only where we're at externally in the world, but internally within ourselves, and to trust that that is It's all we know what we need to know. We're able to do what we need to do. We see what we need to see. And from that place, we can show up for our lives. And from that place, we can make the choices and just trusting our timing, trusting that we can trust ourselves. And no decision is permanent. We can always make a new choice in the future. And no decision for the most part. And again, also, we can make a new decision in the future for almost everything, Some things you can't take back or change, but for almost everything, we can make a new decision or make that decision better for ourselves. And almost every choice that we make is the right choice because it's the choice we made to the best of our ability. And we also have to have grace and compassion for ourselves for the capacity that we have in each phase of our life. It's okay to be where we're at. It really is. And really just making our choices okay, not making ourselves wrong. I think we really have a way of ridiculing ourselves and making things wrong for ourselves, but we can make meaning out of our lives. We can make meaning out of our choices. We can decide that the choice we made was the right one, even if it feels like it wasn't, because there really is no right or wrong. It's just our path. And we're just doing the best we can with what we've got. And it's the same with other people. People can really only meet you where they're at, and you have to accept that. That is a big lesson that I learned in July. People are just showing up with the clarity and capacity that they have. And at the same time, we can't let where they're at impact how we show up. I've had moments this month where I felt the need to hold myself back in some way, whether it's something I did or said, because I wasn't sure how the other person would receive that. I knew that they didn't have the same. They weren't able to show up in the same way that I was, whether that was me being really open and vulnerable or just like wanting more from them in some way. And they weren't able to meet me there. And so I felt myself wanting to not say the words that I needed to say or not show up fully and holding myself back in some way or another. And I had to say, no, I can still show up fully myself. I can still, for example, like really be very vulnerable and open myself up. And this person will either meet me or they won't. And if they can't meet me, then that shows me where they're at. That shows me what our dynamic is going to be. That reveals the truth of this relationship to me. And then I can readjust myself in the future. But I know that I stayed true to myself. I know that I'm proud of how I showed up. I continued to keep my heart open to the world. Or sometimes people really surprise you and you never know how your vulnerability is going to impact other people. Sometimes it's worth it to be the one to go first and to let that bleed into other people's lives, and maybe that you'll see that impact right away and they'll be able to surprise you and meet you right away. Or maybe months, years from now, they'll show up and be like, because of you, I saw your vulnerability and I was eventually able to get there. You just never know how you're going to impact people. And I've shared this before, but being the one to go first, not waiting for another person to change or open up to you, especially when it comes to people who we really want to open the doors and invite into a different kind of dynamic in our life. Like if we want to have a more open, honest, vulnerable relationship with someone in our life, we have to be the one to go first. We have to be the one to invite them into that. And that's scary, and it can be risky because, like I said, we don't know how they're going to receive that or perceive that, but it's worth it. And I've really learned that I would rather put my heart on the line. I'd rather continue to stay vulnerable and soft and open and I would rather risk being uncomfortable and feeling a little edgy than to close myself off and to stay safe. I really would. And I've also just realized how it's so in my nature. Like, I need to voice how I'm feeling. I need to say what's on my heart and on my mind. And being vulnerable and speaking my heart in that way is just a core part of who I am. It's very hard for me to stay in the shallow end. And that's another thing that came up for me in July, is how for some people, I think it's very comfortable for them to stay surface level, and to dive deeper is challenging. And I don't know if it's the Scorpio rising in me or what, but I feel like my baseline is just already in the deep end. And to swim to shore and stay there permanently is more challenging. Of course, I love the mundane. I love the day-to-day talk. I'm not saying I immediately want to know everyone's deepest, darkest secrets all the time or only talk about that, but I want to know all the things. I want to talk about all the things, and I want to share all the things with the people I want to share it with. And my mind just goes there. And I love that about myself. That's part of who I am. And so just owning that is important for me. Self-acceptance and just allowing that to be who I am. And again, people will either meet me there or they won't. And that's okay. I'm not going to change how I show up. And another big thing about this month was really trusting who made my body feel safe. I think our bodies, like I've said before, I think they are always speaking to us in so many different ways. And that's part of our intuition, sending us signs and having a conversation with us. And often how people make our bodies feel is our body's way of telling us who that person is in our life. And I've had many moments where logically it might not make sense to keep a person in my life, or logically it might make sense to keep a person in my life, but my body is telling me something else. My body is telling me, no, this person makes you feel safe. This person, you're drawn to this person, or vice versa. And really trusting my body signals, really tuning into what she's trying to tell me and letting that wisdom guide me, knowing that is my intuition, knowing that is my inner compass, my unconscious coming to the surface and really trying to guide me. And really coming back to this passenger consciousness model that we've talked about from human design, of how my brain isn't here to make the decisions. My brain in here is just to, do the day-to-day things and have ideas, but my body is really here to guide me forward and to lead me through life. And I'm just the passenger, and trusting that inner compass within me to navigate through life. And I think for me, especially having in my human design calm digestion, which just means that I'm meant to take in the world from this calm, grounded, centered place, trusting that when my body feels safe, that's a sign that I'm in the right place, and trusting that I'm meant to feel grounded. And if something automatically, or someone especially, makes me feel dysregulated or overwhelmed or anxious or off center or just far away from myself, that's a sign, and I want to listen to that. Another lesson reflection from July was that rejection, failure, disappointments, projections, they all hurt a lot less when you have a deep foundational relationship with yourself. I have had moments this past month that were disappointing and that felt like a rejection or felt like a redirection, and just frustration and grief and sadness has come up. And trusting that, first of all, that's aligning me with my path and my timing. And also knowing it's been easier to navigate because I can always come back to this foundational relationship that I've established with myself. If someone else, for lack of a better word, rejects me, or if I feel like I failed, or if there's a disappointment, I know it's okay because I'm supporting myself. I've got my own back. I know who I am. I can pick myself up and continue forward on my path and really stay centered and grounded in that. And I'm at peace with whatever anyone else thinks of me because I know who I am. And I can't avoid other people's projections, especially being a fifth line in human design. I can't avoid misunderstandings, but I can understand myself. And also reframing rejections, reframing quote unquote failures, and seeing them as what they truly are: redirections, lessons, gifts, and just, again, not to overuse this word, but really trusting that they are aligning me with my path and letting that bring me to more clarity, and having the patience to wait until the timing is right. Wait until the timing is right. And having that, this is why I think that knowing yourself and trusting yourself and really being able to be alone and have these practices with ourselves so that we have this kind of relationship with ourselves, why that is so important is because then you can put yourself out there in the world. You can go out and take the risks and follow your dreams and have your heart wide open. And it doesn't feel so scary. If something goes wrong, your whole world isn't rocked and shocked, and you're not relying on other people for your sense of self-esteem or your sense of self in general. You know who you are no matter what, and no rejection or failure is going to take that away from you. You're just building up your capacity. And that's been really important. And I've been able to look back and be like, my rock bottom moments and my steadfast devotion to building this foundation for myself has allowed me to now know that I can't think of one thing really, and maybe this isn't true, but there's very few things that could completely take me away from myself long term. Like, definitely things that could rock me and lead me to some breakdowns and tears. But again, that's also just like part of my process. But very few things that could completely shake me to my core and throw me off my path, because I've established this relationship with myself, and I have the rituals and the tools in my life that always bring me back to center and always remind me of who I am. And I'm the only one who needs to do that, and I'm the only one who can do that. So I hope that leads to some reflection around where you're at with yourself and your grounding, your foundation that you've built for yourself. And one thing that came up for me this month around this was my trip to Maine. If you have been following me on Instagram or listened to some past solo podcasts, I shared that I was going to Maine this past month for a little healing pilgrimage back to my sleepaway camp that I haven't been to in 12 years. And that camp holds so many memories for me and so much meaning for me. I could do a whole episode on just that, but I went to that sleepaway camp, all girls uniform sleepaway camp for 2 months every summer from when I was 8 years old to like 16. And it was such a formative time in my life. But that last summer when I was 16, I went back as a CIT, a counselor in training, with just a few girls from my age group, not everyone. And it was the first time I was really struggling with my eating disorder. And that summer changed a lot. It changed my relationship with those girls. It changed my relationship with the camp in a lot of ways. And I hadn't been back since. I almost went back as a counselor actually with some of the girls the year after, and even tried to go back and visit a few times, and every time I was just filled with so much panic and anxiety, and I couldn't do it. But then a couple of months ago, just this past year, I've been hiking, and while I was on my hikes, and just all of a sudden I started to get these pulls towards camp. And this is often what happens to me. I just start to get these knowings, this energetic pull towards something of, I need to do this, I need to go there. And that's why I started to get around my camp of, I need to go back to camp. And so I made it happen. I reached out, and people are allowed to visit. And so I set up a day and decided to make a little weekend of it. I drove back to my camp, drove the 6 to 7 hours to Maine, and I spent an afternoon at my camp, and it brought up a lot. It really brought up a lot. And I'm still processing it. Honestly, it brought up, looking around at the camp, first of all, it was so crazy to be there and to feel like, wow, this could be any summer. Like, this camp hasn't changed at all, in the most beautiful of ways. It was crazy to look at the campers and be like, I could be a camper right now. Tradition is such a big part of my camp. And so to see that upheld is so special to me. Like, that's so important. But it also brought up a lot of grief and a lot of loneliness, and just a lot of things for me to continue to sift and sort through. And it made me, I set 2 intentions for the trip. And one was to reconnect to this childlike joy and purity that version of me tapped into when I was a camper. And also to allow any feelings that needed to come up to be confronted and processed and worked with. And that definitely happened. I'm still in that process. And although I definitely did reconnect to this, summertime version of me, I wasn't able to get to that pure joy essence that we can tap into when we're younger. And it made me sad. It made me feel like, it made me realize that sometimes we can't go back to that purity. And again, I eventually got to a place of acceptance of, yes, maybe in this instance, I can't get back to that pure childlike joy yet or ever. And there will always be different layers and flavors to my relationship with my camp now. And although there's grief in that, it also shows me, it also is just who I am. I have scars now, and I'm not afraid of them. I'm not ashamed of them, and they're part of who I am. And even though I can't reconnect to that pure childlike version of me, in a lot of ways, I'm more alive than ever. I feel more deeply. I am more present. I am more outspoken. I'm more confident. And part of that is because of the experiences I had. And that took me, having that realization was very grounding for me. At first, when I left the camp, I was just feeling so overwhelmed and didn't know exactly how I was feeling or where I would land. And that's kind of where I've landed right now. But definitely, it brought up a lot. And I could go into that more now, but I think going back to what I was talking about in the beginning of the episode, that's in the real time processing I'm doing, and that's the grounding parts of it I feel like I can share in this moment. So we'll circle back if there's more to share in the future. And lastly, a reflection I want to share about July is just around connection and how nothing nourishes us more than connection, whether that's with ourselves, with nature, with others. Life is really all about connection. And for me, nothing continues to bring me more aligned with my path or more deeply connected to myself than connection in all its forms. And it keeps us moving forward. I think it keeps us feeling fully alive. It keeps us connected to our humanity connection, and when we're disconnected, it can be so easy to get caught up in the external noise. It can be so easy to remove ourselves from humanity. I think when we're disconnected, we want the quickest, fastest, most productive way. We want the AI summaries, and we want the succinct form of the product. We want the perfected product. And when we're connected and present, we are more accepting of the humanness, We can allow for the messy middle. And I want to be in the human imperfection of life now more than ever. I want to have the hard conversations. I want to sit in the silences. I want to listen to people talk about their real feelings and their real lives. I want to share podcasts like this. Like, I'm not going to edit this at all. I'm not going to perfect this. I'm not going to redo it because I've stumbled over my words or some of what I said might be confusing. This is me in process, and that's what these episodes are for. And that's really important to me. And I think that that's what the world needs. I really, really do. Let's see. Did I talk about everything I wanted to for the July reflections? This month, I felt very unstable a lot of this month. I felt very maybe unstable is the wrong word. I felt unsteady. I felt unclear, uncertain, out of control, in the sense that, like, not that I felt out of control, but I couldn't control external circumstances or other people. And that's very challenging for me. And where I've landed is what I've been sharing. All I can do is show up the best I can in each moment with the choices and clarity and capacity I have in each moment, and let that be enough. And to do so with intention and integrity, guided by my intuition and with confidence, and to let those be my anchors. And as long as I'm doing that, I can trust that all the pieces are going to fall into place. Trust, patience, confidence. That's where July is landing me now. And so we move into August from that place, and I really just can't believe it's August. Again, I was hoping August would be all about launching and sharing the launch and talking about that with everyone. And right now it's looking like August is still going to be this in between. It's still going to be very much in the process. But I'm also allowing the fact that the in between is life. All of life is the in between. Even when we have reached an endpoint, it's just the in between to the next endpoint. And so the most important part is the messy middle. The most important part is the in between. It's all the in between of the in between. And so I'm just allowing that to be. I'm releasing my need to know. I'm trusting that I'll know that I'll have the clarity when I need to have the clarity. And so August feels like it's going to be slightly more spacious and rooted than July, slightly slower paced and simpler, partially because I'm not going anywhere. August is fully focused on getting the space ready and just being really intentional and present with that and excited about that process, being just very in the process and heads down, blinders on, focused on what I'm doing and what I need to do to bring it to life and to let that be enough. And again, the biggest part of why I think August is going to be more spacious and rooted is because I've come to a place of acceptance. I'm not going to try to make it anything it's not. I'm not going to try to speed it up or control anything that I can't. I'm just going to let it be what it is. And so I just want to continue to allow for my process, continue to stay focused on the choices I need to make in this present moment and the current clarity and capacity I have to make them and to allow that to be enough. I want to continue to show up fully raw, real, and vulnerable, and to push aside any temptations to filter, edit, shrink, or quiet myself, to stay away from self-doubt or self-censorship. I want to continue to allow myself to be in process and share from that place, to show up messy, imperfect, uncertain, and unclear, and to let that be okay, to find peace in not knowing, and to do so with intention, with integrity, guided by my intuition, and to continue to show up for all I do with grounded confidence, steadfast trust in myself, and unwavering devotion to who I am and where I am going. I'm hoping more clarity will come in August and I can film next month's reflection and intention setting ritual episode with that clarity, but only time will tell and I'll accept what is. But I know that I'm going to have the courage to meet this month with an open heart and open arms and this steadfast devotion to myself and to my path. And I hope that you feel the same. It is Leo season for most of this month, although the end of August we walk into Virgo season, my favorite season. So I'm really embracing that Leo energy. And for me, that means walking heart-led with courage. And it's interesting because Leo is in my 10th house of public life and work. And so having that Leo energy in my public facing work area of my life feels, I guess, fitting. Although I think it would feel even more fitting if I was really launching the space this month, but only time will tell. I'm ready. I'm excited. And I'm going to try to document the creation process of the space as much as possible. Again, finding that balance between sharing in process and being in my own process behind the scenes, but so much to come, so much to share, and trusting the timing of when to share it. But I'd love to hear what July brought up for you guys. If there's any reflections you want to share, if you guys have any intentions for the month that you want to declare and share with me, please do. I would love to hear from you. And if you want to be the first to know about any goings-ons in the space and be the first to receive any details about launching and all the VIP access, sign up for the link in bio to get on that wait list. That would mean a lot to me. And also, please follow along on Substack. That's really where I'm pouring a lot of my heart on a day-to-day basis. And of course, Instagram. And the podcast will be here every week. I am so excited about some of the guests that we have on in the next coming weeks. So can't wait to share those conversations with you guys. But that's all for now. I am sending so much love, and I will see you next time for more magic. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Intuitively Wild, the podcast. I hope it helped deepen your connection to yourself, sparked some insights, and inspired you to live intuitively wild. If you enjoyed this podcast, it would mean so much to me if you would share it with others and leave a rating and review. And please reach out to me. I would love to connect with you. I will see you next time for more magic.